All right, check 1 2, check 1 2. Hello, everybody. It's been a little while, long while. Get rid of this loading screen. Go. Anyone has any audio issues, let me know. Looks like things are going through okay. And man, it's been months. It's been almost, I don't know how long now. I can't remember the last stream I did, but it's been a while. So yeah, working on a new little piece here, running Cheetah. Brushing up on my Cheetah anatomy. Show you guys my pure ref screen here. Got all types of shots here from some great footage I found online. And I'll show you that link as well. These are all snapshots from some really fantastic high-speed footage of a cheetah chasing a I don't know what you call it, but it's kind of like a fluffy ball, kind of like a makeshift, rabbit or rat like they use for greyhounds when they go around a track. I don't know the technical name for that, but some sort of bait ball kind of thing. So anyway, that's what I'm looking at screen, and that one of the technical drawings, the anatomy um, drawing there. Um, can't think right now. The skeletal muscle anatomy drawing is by Tara Whitlatch. So if there's any young artists out there who love animals and want to render them well, whether it's 2D or 3D, it really helps to, of course, know three-dimensional, form, but usually go through two-dimensional drawings to find that often. But Tara Whitlatch is an incredible animal anatomist, one of the best out there, if not probably the best. She knows real animal anatomy incredibly well, and then it's like once you know the rules, then you can kind of break them. She blends animals together in ways that would be biologically possible. You might take like a horse and a cat, or whatever, and mix them together. That's what she does. She has incredible books. If you've never heard of her, or if you've never purchased one of her books, I highly recommend you do. They are spectacular, beautiful, inspiring. If you're a concept artist as well, definitely. If you're into concepting creatures or anything that's sort of semi-realistic, you want it to be grounded in reality, but still go into a fantasy like Avatar-ish kind of stuff. Again, reference her work because it's some of the best. Um, but anyway, so that's what I got on my other screen, and then you guys can see here. I've got an unnamed cheetah. There's certain things I already did adjustments. So this model, I'll admit, also was provided. The base mesh was provided by Ziva. Ziva Dynamics is an incredible Dynamics muscle system plugin for Maya, and so they have a system where it will take muscles and you assign the insertion and origin, and you basically create a lot of the muscles, the base form for them, and then you put that inside of your you attach it to your bones, and of course that's attached to your rig, and then you um, will do a certain amount of work, and then you'll get an incredible amount of deformation and bulging, and it's great. It's not perfect, but it's really good. And so that work was done by someone else that I don't know. They provided that whole base rig for free. So that's where I got some of this muscle deformation and whatnot. But then I already went ahead and started tweaking a lot of different things to make it a bit more my own. The pose, because normally the footage we have of cheetahs are like the ones you saw in the photo reference. They're usually running along a very flat terrain. Obviously, the savannah is pretty flat in Africa, but of course there might be areas with hills or rocks and whatnot. So that's where this pose kind of comes into play. Where this specific pose I was going for, I wanted kind of a maximum uh, sort of exciting angle for the pose, but still realistic and not going into a fantasy level of what an animal would do or could do. So the rationale I have behind this is that this is most likely what the cat would look like if it was running up a stair stepped or an elevated platform from where it's currently at to the next elevation. So hence the pitch up a little bit rather than the more downward or forward kind of movement. So one, there'd be again a motion of upwardness. Again, like subconsciously, like ideas of victory, achievement, striving toward that all these metaphorical ideas, concepts for what a pose would embody. Versus, if you have something going down, obviously that's all those other negative connotations like failure, collapse, that kind of thing. So, basic art psychology, I guess you could say, basic anatomy, art psychology. Just like if you've ever taken an art history course or just studied it online, you'll see that the most dynamic poses are never the ones where things are getting hit. Let's say if you're talking about action, you'll see war sequences or paintings of people in combat, and you don't see them usually striking so much as more so the wind up, right? You have a batter that's hitting, holding the bat back before they hit, the wind up, the potential, all the, culmination, building to the climax. That's the anticipation of something happening. That's always the more exciting, more thrilling moment that will crescendo into the climax, the peak of something. And so that's what gets people more excited and energized by looking at something when it's a still image or render in this case or statue. So anyway, so trying to add as much dynamism to the pose while also keeping it grounded in reality. So this is going to be an exercise in anatomy to some degree, sculpting in some of the muscles here, defining them a little bit better, and then I'll probably start sculpting in the fur a bit as well, because this is going to be eventually 3D printed as well. And a note for anyone who's showing up here who's followed me for a couple years now, there's been a bunch of stuff that I've started and nearly finished or have finished on these streams, but I haven't shown you guys the 3D printing part of it, because I haven't really fully completed all these things to the point where I actually want to spend the resin and the time doing them. So I'm going to try to do that this year. Definitely start printing a lot of stuff. And I moved, so in case anyone remembers me from the past, the background's all different here because I moved into a little house in California. So first time now out of an apartment into a house, kind of a big deal. And so that's exciting. So now this is my office fully. And so I have some 3D printers behind me that are not hooked up at the moment, and a bunch of artwork that I still need to hang, so hence the disarray that you see behind me, some boxes and whatnot. So, yeah, so things are going to be improving here over the next couple streams. You'll see, I guess, hopefully some developments of artwork and statues and whatnot going on back there. But anyway, so all that aside, if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them or acknowledge them, however be. Changing my stuff here. Yeah, I can show you guys this video quick too. Just let me mute it just in case the music is copywritten. I think this was also, not mistaken, this was done by National Geographic, but this is on Vimeo. And I just did a Google search for running cheetah, and this is what I found. Show you guys this quick too. It's a great reference, and I'll put the link of this video in the chat. So if anyone out there wants to attempt to do a cheetah as well or a running cat, this is a great reference for it. And yeah, is this? Don't judge me on how many tabs I have opened. I know we're all the same. But here is this video. Just awesome. Just great clean footage. Really beautiful, totally free, available to the public to use as far as reference goes. Don't need to have to pay to count or anything. Yeah, just gorgeous, just absolutely gorgeous phantom camera footage. And they go on for different shots here. I have another one here where they show it at like, I don't know, maybe it's a quarter speed. Where is it here? Maybe it's the beginning of this. Yeah, it's here. Really gorgeous stuff. Yeah, that's probably maybe a quarter speed, and then they slow down to whatever this is, like, thousands of frames per second. And then they, at the end here, they have this awesome footage. I mean, I find all this is exciting and beautiful, but this last set here is just like, man, this gives me so many ideas, and just this, like, you get the real sense of speed here. That's just incredible. It's just awesome. It overtakes the camera. So cool. I'm a huge animal nerd, so if anyone doesn't know, I love animals, and I find animals more exciting and interesting than humans as far as artistic study goes. Worked on many human characters, and have been very privileged and lucky to have worked on some amazing human characters. So between the last stream I did, I think. And this one, I've worked on some amazing projects, which I'm very grateful for. Um, some of them have been Spider-Man: No Way Home. Got to work on Tom Holland, Sandman, and a little bit on Green Goblin. Most of my work was on Tom Holland, doing a lot of shot modeling, which is essentially animations that have been performed, mocap performed, whatever, acted, and or animated, and then the rig breaks the model to the point where there's like instead of a very defined hand, you have like this really mushy, rubberized looking smooth hand, and all these other areas where the anatomy is just getting like the arm is penetrating through the or through the pectoral muscle, or you have all these other intersections and just interpenetrations and mess, just a mess. It's like shockingly like, wow, a lot of stuff that need to be fixed. So did a ton of work on just Tom Holland anatomy. So the whole suit from the neck down, just tons of work on tons of shots. Really proud of the work we all did. And it was a team of about 15 of us in that department, and we just busted our asses in that movie. And we're so proud of the work that came out of it. Yeah, we were so I cried the first time I saw it, the whole movie. It was great. So real like a little feather in cap life achievement kind of thing, you know, a little something to be really proud to and lucky to have been a part of. Worked on the Secrets of Dumbledore. Did the glove. If you see that, if you've seen the movie, there's this Dumbledore has a leather glove at one point in the middle of the movie that sort of directs them where to go, and there's a couple shots of it. So I sculpted that whole thing from a really basic scan that was just basically volume reference. Incredible amount of work on that glove that was only on screen for like 30 seconds, maybe at most. And then a bunch of banners and people, and like a lot of people in the crowds. I did a lot of like assembly of their clothes and creation of like the bamboo banners to make doubles of the real physical banners they're holding in a lot of those shots. And lastly, most recently, Black Adam. Did a lot of work on Dwayne Johnson, on his Digi-Double, did a lot of work on Pierce Brosnan's Digi-Double, and then two or three of the other actors, Hawkman and a lovely female actress, so forgive me, I can't remember her name or the name of the character because it's been a long time now. It was like late last year, and there's so much else that happened after that for me just in life with moving and everything else. There was a bit of a fixer-upper situation with the house too. So anyway, a lot of stuff has happened since I was off stream until now. So an adventure. But anyway, ZBrush has been an integral part of all that journey. Oh yeah, I got to work on Katy Perry's show in Vegas, like pretty much her entire mushroom set, stage set, and a giant snail, and some of her trash set. If you've seen the show or if you look online, you'll know what I mean. So there were designers who gave me the base designs and then said make it look more real or make it look more fantasy, and so I did a ton of work moonlighting on the evenings after I was done working on Spider-Man during the day for DD for Digital Domain. In the night, I'd be working with the Square Division primarily is the name of the company, and just did a ton of modeling, which was all done then for real prop production. And I have a background in that from years ago when I worked at a theater called Sight and Sound in Pennsylvania, where we did the theater does biblical productions, like literal biblical productions, but larger than Broadway. So like massive, huge sets. And really, again, was blessed, lucky to be a part of that. And that all directly translated into the work that I did last year for Katie's show. So yeah, if you go to my website, you guys can see a lot of the work I'm talking about. I haven't updated anything from my Spider-Man reel, or for my Spider-Man reel, I guess, because I've just been, it's just life, just so busy. I need to update. I need to make a reel really for my most recent work. But anyway, if anyone's interested, you can see. Especially a lot of the Katie stuff was easy to upload because they had all those assets. The other thing with Spider-Man and anything Disney is like, you don't have any of those files on your computer. It's all you're remoting into a computer in another state. So you're just remote controlling another computer, but you never save any of those files or make any of those files on your local machine. So it's a really good safety measure, but it also kind of sucks for those of us who want to be able to show anything on our reel or portfolio later. We have to like rip it from, images from the Blu-ray. We have to like just like, we could ask DD to give us it, but it's such a long, cumbersome process, and Disney's so super sensitive, and there's like forms, and it's just insane. It's insane, and then you may not even get the footage that you worked on. So it really kind of blows in that sense. So anyway, instead of having to go through all that rigmarole, they just said like, hey, just rip the DVD when you get it. So that's what I have to do, and I just haven't really gone to that length of it because I don't specialize in pirating stuff, so I don't even know where to start with that other than like probably finding YouTube clips and then screenshotting those. But anyway, new headache. But anyway, sorry. So anyway, life catch up done. Moving on now to actually Sculpting. And sorry, I missed a whole bunch of stuff here in the chat. Let me just take care of this quick. Artist from Ukraine. Oh wow. Wondering if be free access to ZBrush, price the full version versus. I mean, I have absolutely no influence upon what they can grant people or if they can. I mean, I would assume sadly that most people don't get free anything, unfortunately. You're passionate and want to make study profession. Yeah. But I would suggest perhaps looking at subscribing. I think the subscriptions are usually pretty reasonable and they're much more affordable than buying a perpetual license. And that's a really great way to start. So I would say look into subscriptions. But if you really want to talk to Maxon, I would say find their contact information. But I'm not a direct representative for the company in that sense. I have no influence or ability, sadly, to do any kind of networking in that department for you. I'm sorry. But yeah, I would say at least reach out to them. Reach out to them directly through a contact us form, and see what they'll say. They might be sympathetic and they might help you out, but I have no way of influencing or letting you know what they can or can't do for you. I'm sorry, but I wish I could. I would if it was up to me. Sure, absolutely. Um, so Solo is asking, is it game ready? No, I mean, no, it's not. This is not meant to be rendered in a game engine necessarily, or animated, I should say. It's definitely animation ready in the sense that yeah, the rig is animation ready, obviously, because this was posed from a rig that's already prepared. And it's got some great topology, absolutely. But this is, obviously, as you can see here, we're looking at wire mesh. This is an extremely dense mesh, so I would not look to have this, other than if this was the only thing in your scene, with a few other assets, maybe you could bring it into Unreal 5 and do something with it. But yeah, I wouldn't say that this would be a hero character, But I mean, we're looking at over 600,000 points, so it's pretty heavy. You'd want to retopo this or see if you could subdivide lower. But I don't think we can try this. We can see if we can reconstruct a subdivision. Yeah, okay. So we can see how far we can go back. It's been a while since I've even touched this mesh. Yeah, okay. So see, this would be much more friendly for a game right now. Obviously, we could go up to 100,000. You can go over 100,000, of course, with a character, but to be really efficient, you'd probably want to keep it no more than here, I would think. And you could go even a little higher. I mean, 600 is a bit pushing it, Plus, in a game, if you really wanted this to look great, you'd want to do, I guess, either hair cards for fur, or you'd want to figure out, which I have to learn, the Yeti to curves into export from Maya for hair and fur, and then how to import that into Unreal, the way that Weta did for their eagle and meerkat demo. So if you look up the meerkat eagle demo by Weta with Unreal for Epic, they did an incredible job. I mean, it looks practically film quality, like super realistic, gorgeous, and something I specifically need to learn. Actually, I need to learn how to retro engineer those techniques for some characters I'm working for a little short that I'm making. Well, but anyway, yeah. So to answer your question, is it game ready? Kind of, yeah. I mean, I guess if we want to go back to the low poly, but I'm definitely operating in the higher realm here for sculptural sake. Also love animals except snakes. I hate snakes. Yeah, you and me both, dude. Yeah, snakes and I'm not a big fan of snakes or scorpions or tarantulas so much. I mean, I'm not gonna like recoil in massive fear, but definitely don't really want to get close to them either if I have a choice. Um, Congrats, thank you. I appreciate it. So when you do the animation for movies, so how many polygons do you have to work with it? So I mean, I'm not. So the animation is sort of done already for me to some degree. So I'm working with an animation that the rig is already animated, so to speak. So we'll scrub through, a certain animation and make sure that blend shapes we're working with. So shot modeling is not just sculpting in the detail into one static pose. It's sculpting the detail into the motion, which is it's like blend shape hell, you could say, or heaven, however you want to look at it. But it's very tightly ramped up and brought down. So you look at like sine waves, you're going to look at the flow of animation. So you're going to do thousands or hundreds of blend shapes for a small shot that goes on the screen for seconds sometimes. But your eye will catch things if it's in camera and it's not blurred too much. You'll see that the hand looks like mush, and rather than actually like well-defined joints. Same thing for obviously much more so for larger joints like shoulders, elbows, knees, hips. So you really still have to have your blend shapes flow with the animation. So it means that we're doing a lot of sculpting and then having those blend shapes trail off or blend into other blend shapes. And so when you look at like your graph editor, which is how you do a lot of this work, and the specific work I was doing for shot modeling, you're just having all these different colored lines like blend and flow into each other, and all these different. Well, it's insane. It's a lot of work. Polygon wise, I really can't remember exactly what it was at, but like a hero character. I mean, you're looking at I mean, with the suits, I mean, I want to say we were easily over 600,000, probably even close to a million, for some shots because there's just so much detail. And in that case, it's like you still, of course, want to be very efficient, but they also have render farms, so it's like you can push things a bit further, of course, because it's all about end result quality and computational time doesn't matter. That's not really a as long as it functions and it's not going to take it in absorbently abnormally long amount of time to render, it's fine. So you push the polygon count for sure. um but again, we're not sculpting on a base mesh, we're sculpting on a more subdivided mesh, because that's the only way you're going to get the detail. You need obviously you need the poly count to hold that level of detail for things like hands or paws. You're going to need a certain amount of that because just construct here again. Once you break it down to a certain point, you know, it's you're gonna see faceting. Even if you have smooth on, you might see smooth on. Well, you have smooth on, I guess. In my, you could still have it at this level and still have a lack of faceting, but still, you don't want to go too low because you want detail there, and you want the maps to do some of the lifting as well. But it's always like it's a very specific. Your question is always the answer is always very specific to what you're working on. So it's never going to be like a one size fits all kind of thing. Every character, every shot even has its own needs and purposes. So you're always going to be working with very tailored, bespoke kind of poly counts and models, hero models versus wide shot models. So you'll go back and forth between depending on what show you're working on and again the needs of the shots. Um, Comics Legend, what's up? Thank you. Uh, can you rig? Yeah, I mean, sure, you can rig almost anything really, but you would never want to rig something that's really high poly. You'd always want to rig something that's as low as you can go, and then have that animate the higher end rig. I mean, the higher end model, higher subdivided model when you're going to render time. So yeah, you'd never want to animate stuff that's really dense polygonally because you're going to have to paint all those weights, and then it's just going to bog down the system when it's moving. It's going to chug. So yeah, you really want to be intelligent and judicial about you know what you rig and at what poly count, at what detail level. So levels of detail, LODs. You always have to think in that term of like what is needed and how can you best serve the end goal, but also keep it as efficient as possible. So it's always like a balancing of a budget. Essentially, you're balancing your computational and polygonal budgets to achieve the optimal outcome at the end. So yeah. Okay, so I was thinking I'm gonna do nut muscles, but actually I want to do the claws because it's been bugging me for a while. I've been looking at this model for on and off over a couple months, and I really want to have some claws on this guy. So back to there were some good shots. Didn't snapshot of this video when the cat is running at us, just to see like how far they stick out. Because it's interesting how um this animal, cats, they have to keep their claws sharp, and so that's where the retractable claw thing is such a benefit to them. Is that they can push it forward to get grip, like they're like deployable cleats in that sense. They come out when they need to dig into the ground a bit, but then they retract when they obviously are in the air or don't want to get it snagged on something. Um, so it's always interesting to see how that works. Blow this up on the screen for a second. Okay, yeah. I think I could probably just make one claw and then just duplicate it a bunch of times. Um, I think it might even. This is the other trick you guys should always do if you don't. You don't always have to make something custom for the creature you're working on. So, for instance, let me see if I can find here. If I can find one of my raptors, because I can easily take one of their claws and repurpose it for this cat, and it's like, um, just to find that in a while. Um, this might be good enough. One of my raptors that I sell. It's on my site. Um, order it as a 3D print. Super accurate for the most part. Crazy amount of detail. These things I've spent months on and off, like years ago. So this is like obviously like baby raptor, you know. Um, see, do I have the claws separate in this one? I don't remember. I think yes, I do. Cool. These claws. Yeah, fine. So back to my cheetah. This makes me think of that line by Muldoon in Jurassic Park. Cheetah speed, 50, 60 miles per hour if they're good out in the open. And they're astonishing jumpers. Dude, I have that movie memorized, like every sound effect, every voiceover, every line. Ridiculous. Saw Jurassic Park when I was 10 and changed my life. Made me ask, how do they make me do that? I know it's not real, but it looks real. Behold, I never thought I would be helping make movies or be chasing my own, but sure. Okay, so yeah, delete the big killing clocks. That. I had delete hidden out here, but oh yeah, there it is. I'll roll with the like the little like rear view claws. I don't know what it's properly called. Symmetry on these because their foot is in position. Delete hidden. All right, now we got base claw to work with already. So whenever you have made something else, you know, make sure you keep it in a nice organized folder system in some way so you know where they are and you can always pull parts off of stuff and kind of kit bash your characters together so you're not making everything from scratch for the third or fourth time when, you know, obviously repurpose something and make it look accurate to what you need, but at least you've got yourself like 80% of the way there. And you just save yourself time and sanity. um, Shrink this down, and we got to remember the cat is hairless, so it's kind of like we're designing something here that should have some fur going over it, but you don't want to necessarily place it in a way that would make this look as if it had fur on it already. You want to place it as it was a, you know, like a deferred animal, and then proper sculptural detail for the fur to place properly. All right, I think. Do I have an art station or YouTube? Yeah, I have both. I don't update either as much as I should. I really haven't updated that stuff at all. But yeah, you can find me as far as sites. So for the most part, you can find me as this on pretty much almost any social platform that you're looking for me on. Um, excuse me. Greetings from Peru. Greetings from Los Angeles County. Comics legend. Did I ever 3D print the lion and gift it to John Favreau? I have not, but I do want to, and I do want to finish it. Actually, I think, funny you ask, I think I have it open here because I've kind of in these very busy months, I've stepped away from doing a lot of personal projects because of either work projects demanding my attention and or just not really being that motivated. Sadly, I'm being honest. And it's not that I don't like working at ZBrush at all or anything. It's just other life issues just pulling my attention away. But here it is. I mean, this is still, I think, the furthest it's at. I started editing the God rays coming down from the clouds because I thought, instead of having it just be like a giant chunk of clear acrylic plastic, I'd like it to have a bit more stair stepping and like unique stippling of light, so to speak, so that it would be a bit more naturalistic and also a bit more visually. But I'm also going to try to do this in Unreal, I think, as well. Just as something else, I've been like one of the most recent projects I was working on for another company was dealing with creating clouds that formed letters, form words. So that's really not an easy task for somebody who doesn't know Houdini practically at all. So I had to go and find tons of tutorials and ask friends for help. And thank God that some friends of friends were so generous in helping me out with just learning and understanding to a degree how to do the tasks that I was asked to do, hired to do. It was pretty challenging, so definitely going to give them some thanks and a kickback. But geez, having something that's sculpted like this, this is not finished obviously, versus having it look the way you'd want it to in Unreal, or I mean in Houdini anyway, which is where you got to do all this like cloud simulation and have things like flowing off in certain directions, and having a storm system morph into this in a way that looks good. It's a ton of work. It's a lot of work. So it's something that I definitely want to do though, because I've already gotten this far with the help of some good friends and learning how clouds can move and gaseous particles and that kind of stuff in Houdini. But there's still a tremendous amount that I don't know and I need to learn. I want to learn. So, but I really want to, yeah, I do want to give this to John for sure. I need to figure out the best way to get in touch with him. I have friends who've worked with him. My art director who brought me on Lion King, he has his email, but I mean, he never checks it, I guess. I don't know. He's so busy, I know, and I'm sure he's hit up by so many people, and he has so many pertinent things with like Mandalorian and whatever else he's working on. But yeah, no, I definitely want to still just I want to make this just everything that I envisioned it to be, but then also I would love to actually animate that sequence with the sound and everything the way I see it in my head, because it's just so beautiful and epic and moving, and I just want to take straight to match it one to one with the audio from the original animated movie. Because it's just when you go back and listen to it with a good set of headphones or a really good subwoofer and sound system, like, man, James Earl Jones' voice, and then just adding in that crack of thunder and lightning when from my design of it, when he forms himself out of the clouds, and with the shooting star that I designed to come into the clouds, and all the lightning and thunder and like volcanic lightning out on the sides, and it's just like super intimidating and like huge epic. It's gonna be freaking awesome. Like, it's just what I see in my head. It's just very just glorified. It's just this really epic version of the movie, of that sequence. So I really just need to there's other projects here. Fireplace alien. Oh yeah, I gave this to John Krasinski, another John. This has been this was cool. I don't know if I showed this on stream. I think I did. Yeah, I think I did do this. Yeah, but yeah, I got to autosave. I got to give this to John. So for anyone who may not know, there was a live Q&A when Fireplace Part 2 came out, and I learned what theater he was going to be at, and I got there in time, and when they had a Q&A, and so I asked him if I could basically I praised him for the work he did in the films and asked him to give him a print of this. Sadly, I couldn't give him the big scale version that I wanted to. I have that now done, of course. I've had it for months. But I gave him a littler version, which is at least something. I felt kind of embarrassed about it, but I gave one of my Raptors as well. But anyway, yeah, this was another another cool piece that I got to give to another John named director. Here we go. No, wrong one again. Where is my hat? There we go. Okay. Anyway, yeah, thanks. Anyway, okay. So, sorry, back to work. And I feel like I barely have to do. I'm gonna form this up a little bit and start placing it different. So, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask questions. Smoothing it out because the ridges that I have are rings like going around perpendicular to the flow of the nail. And cats and dogs, if I'm not mistaken, you see the striations going inward, tip to back of the form of the striations and the it's a catch up stream. Thanks, man. Uh, you ever worked on the miniature industry? I mean, not really. I've done a fair amount of work in the toy industry here and there, but I have not specifically done work for the miniature. But I mean, I'm well aware of like Warhammer and of course Dungeons and Dragons. It's not my personal. I don't personally enjoy those games. Like I don't play the board games, but I'm aware of how huge there is of a following for them and how ravenous people are for them. So yeah. But yeah, no, I'm definitely very well aware of their existence and how much people love them. Never got into that necessarily. But it's it's like anything though. If there's people out there who'd want to hire me for that or something, if the money's right. But it's like so many times I know that there's a lot of companies that they just it's hard to find that happy balance of like not feeling like I'm working my total ass off for hours and hours and hours. Like I'm really getting to the point now where I'm looking position wise for maximum income for less time, not because I want to be lazy or because I want to be greedy or anything like that. I'm working harder and more toward making my own films and needing the time to be able to make them, to work on them, which is a lot of what I'm doing here in this sense. It's work, my own work, but then having a residual income or passive income, I guess, and or when I am paid for my time, that it's handsomely paid because I'm being more of a creative director rather than just the artist, which is actually what a new position is that I've taken recently. Working with a new startup called Space Interactions, and uh, we are essentially making the world's most comprehensive orbital catalog. So we are essentially assimilating data from SpaceX and Space Force and NASA and JPL and European Space Union and a bunch of other places, and creating the most secure and comprehensive catalog of satellite debris or space debris, I should say, both active satellites and inactive debris, stuff that's been destroyed that's dangerous. So we're trying to create the most comprehensive catalog of that. So I'm helping with the visualization tool, which is basically piece of software we're developing that's game engine based and is going to be a beautiful representation of the Earth. Also, accurate twinning of satellites, even somewhat to a degree of debris and other things like that. So, but I'm also helping design the look for everything, and from head to toe, soup to nuts, like graphic design, appearance, just the booth stuff to like the whole 9 yards kind of right now. And that's just where I'm looking to kind of migrate to because, again, like I said, looking for just more time to income ratio to be teetered in the other way. Because when you're young and you're starting out as an artist, you know, you're usually making an income that's you're just getting by and you're happy that you're making whatever you're making. Um, you know, but when it comes to your bigger life goals, you know, if you don't want to just be the artist that's doing all the work all the time and just getting by, you've got to start, you know, setting your sights, you know, higher, bigger. That's what I've been working toward, because that's my personal goal, though, is to have more time to pour into make. So basically, making a couple shorts that are just really powerful that can show what I can do, how my mind works, and my artistic style. Um, so that then I can get investors to back the really big stuff that I want to do. Because the films I have in my mind and the stuff I'm working on is, you know, would deserve like $100 million budget, or at least an $80 million budget, somewhere around there. You know what I mean? To really make it the way I envision it, and with the quality and the scale of what I'm working on. You know, so I'm very confident in my abilities and what I want to do, and that it's getting things right compared to how much Hollywood doesn't. But I have to show it because people, especially people with money, seem to not have the imagination when you just show little bits of something. You have to show them as much as you can that says fully, like what they call a vertical slice in a game. You know, you kind of show the breadth of what can all be done essentially in the game, so it gives people a really good idea of like what the scope is, without going out too wide. So you have verticals, you show a lot of the, you know, abilities and functionality and that kind of thing. So anyway, so same kind of concept with making a good short film is like show your, you know, director chops. You show them the ability that you have mentally, for where you want to go and artistically, and how you can execute it. And then that's basically, you know, the pitch. So that's what I'm putting most of my energy and effort toward creatively at this point. Um, but it's not without its stressors and frustrations as well, simply because it requires a lot of a person. It's a lot of unpaid effort a lot of times. You know, of course, the payoff is getting to do what you really want to do with your life and making decent income from that. But it's not an easy feat. It's really not. Working hard to get there. We just need more great filmmakers out there, and that's the dream for me. Be a good storyteller, to tell stories that matter and that affect people in a positive way, but also, you know, just make people think and feel and walk out of the theater needing to talk about it, wanting to share that with other people. Of course, then making money for the whatever studio or investors back and help make the film. So, you know, it's show business. Got to create a product that people want, but it doesn't mean that it can't be something that's spectacular and that, um, unique in some ways, or just classic. You know, I mean, like really, I really enjoyed Top Gun, Maverick. That was so refreshing and fun, and just a great movie. It was better than we ever thought it would be. So a lot of my friends and I took like at least four friends. I've seen it four times in the theater. I took four different friends each time because they all wanted to see it, and I was happy to see it again. So I was like, I'll go with you, or let's go. And so, yeah, took one friend of mine who's my actually my gym trainer, and he and I went to see it on premiere night at the Hollywood CCL Chinese Theater, and man, it was awesome. He's former Navy as well, so that was like it really resonated with him there. But God, it was cool. It was a lot of fun. Um, Great, you know, that's one of the, for those who don't know, the Chinese theater right now, the IMAX there in particular, is one of the best IMAXs in the country, probably in the world, I guess, really, because of the fact that they have a great laser projector, a great screen, great sound system, huge theater, huge screen. Man, it was great. It was awesome. I am a movie freak. If I can see, if there's a great movie coming out and they're showing it there, I'm gonna go see it there. Or like one time I was lucky enough to be invited, to be selected to be invited amongst other people to go to see the second to last Mission Impossible. I guess it was Rogue Nation. I got to see that at IMAX headquarters, just up here in like Playa del Rey, and got to meet Christopher McQuarrie, chat with him a little bit, and man, that was a great experience too. I love the Mission Impossible movies, and I think Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise are like the chocolate and peanut butter of combination when it comes to filmmaking and action movie star. Definitely, they definitely have a good working relationship there. Um, they definitely know how to make a great movie. Um, what else do we see? 3D printing, do you merge all subtools in Dynamesh or just remesh by union? Yeah, great question, Neil. Yeah, I now when it comes to things like this, high poly and detailed, once you reach a certain level of detail, it really doesn't make sense to Dynamesh. You can because you often lose detail and it gets kind of mushy. And if you're going to print at a very high resolution, or your printer can really nail all that detail, you're diminishing returns, right? You're like decreasing the detail fidelity when you remesh a lot of times with Dynamesh. So I'll just do like, yeah, merge by, or is it mesh by union, or what is it with live boolean? It's been a while. But essentially I just use live boolean. So it only remeshes at the point of junction, point of intersection. So that's I just live boolean everything together. That's how I operate now. Before that existed, yeah, I mean you just do like a high level Dynamesh, and then project or resculpt the detail back in. But now with live boolean, it just remeshes right at the union, the point of intersection, and that's perfect. So that's the dream, right? So they retain all the detail everywhere else, and only at the point of intersection is there any kind of change. And it usually does a really good job. So just that to operate in that mentality, you just want to make sure that at your point of intersection, you make those details as crisp and clean and the intersection um, just as pristine as it can be, so that when it does actually get remeshed, when the points are reassigned, essentially that is um, optimal, right? And by that I mean also you want to make sure that mesh A and mesh B have a similar poly count, at least in the areas of intersection, so it makes it easier for the processor for the computer, for the software to make that bridge, to bridge that gap essentially, to stitch those areas together. Because if you have something that's really high poly and something that's really low poly, and you try to bridge it, it's going to have to create all these extra, because it's not going to create n-gons, so it's going to have to create all these extra polygons that terminate into the lower polygon count of the part B from the part A. So you want to have them have about close to equal, as much as you can, points at the point of intersection. So you can even still have lower polygon counts on other ends, but where they intersect, you want to make sure that they're as close to each other polygon-wise as possible. So in this case, we can just look at this as an example. Now this has been already decimated, as you can tell, because it's triangulated everywhere, because that raptor is something I've printed a lot. So here, I mean, again, you just want to look at like where this is and where this is, and it's like, it's like they're close, but we could probably go up higher with this. So I'd go up to this level, fresh, and now it looks, you can just tell by the density right there. It's much closer, and so that's probably going to be just not that the previous one would have been that hard for it to do because they weren't that extreme in differences, but this is a much more comfortable, probably faster, easier way for it to fully in these parts together. And even still, like now, it's like perfectionist in me is like, well, I want to fix this a little bit because it's like you got that little pocket, that hole for the claw to come out, but then the tissue wouldn't just be like that; it would be around the claw, right? So I'm just placing them right now, and then I kind of come back through, I think, and sort of expand that tissue from the exit of the claw, so that it anatomically correct. I'm a psychotic detail nerd. Also, I try to print high resolution now, and with the Form 3s, you can get such great quality from them that you will see these details, and you will see the difference for anyone who cares. You know what I mean? Like if you're making just a toy, like kids don't really care. A lot of times, the company hiring you doesn't probably care as long as it looks decent and it's functional. It's fine. But for those of us who are super nerds and love beautiful, true sculpture, you don't want a toy so much as you want a work of art. You want a sculpture. Um, that's where attention to detail comes in. You want a monumental sculpture. You want something, or if you also want to create something that can be scaled. You got to pay attention to details, because while it may not should really be almost visible to the human eye if it's like 6 inches long, but if it's 6 feet long, now you're going to see all that detail, and that's where you might have to even break up parts, obviously, because something may not be big enough to print all that or CNC that in one go, but also just to subdivide up and get higher resolution at that larger scale, you might have to then segment at logical breakpoints. So like in the elbow or crease of the between the bicep and the pectoral muscle, right? Like at the collarbone, underneath the shirt, that kind of, places like that, or where the shirt touches with the skin. Make those breaks there, and then subdivide up those parts individually, and making sure that their intersection or contact points line up perfectly so that they can be reassembled or assembled, once those parts are manufactured, essentially fabricated, piece by the end. But again, those are all just best practices, things to think about. And a lot of that can be done down the road. I think often I try to encourage people who are looking to get into more advanced 3D printing techniques to sculpt the creature, the character you want to see as you want them to see, as you want to see it at the end. And then, think about where you're going to make those breaks. You usually don't have to think about that too early on, but things you do want to think about are, if you're sculpting like clothing and wrinkles, maybe intentionally make sure one of those wrinkles looks naturalistic, but happens to fall, or a seam happens to fall exactly where you want that break to be. So then you go into that crease, you go into that crevasse, right? That little recessed area, and that's where you make your cut so that it seems seamless when you put it together as best you can. But again, those are all just kind of tricks of the trade you pick up over time from, seeing how other people did it and just seeing what makes sense for what you want to do. So anyway, sorry, I'm talking a lot, and watching claws is probably exciting. Know you're a big dinosaur fan. What are your thoughts on the new toy sculpts for the movie? Do you sculpt on the final pose or start from T pose? Yeah, I usually start in T pose. For sure. I do as much as I can, Diego. I do as much as I can in T pose, and then of course when you pose it, certain things can get a little stretched or a little mushy here and there. You always want to mask nicely and then do your deformation as best you can. But there's always going to be a little bit of resculpting, I think, once you have your character posed. So then I always go back and touch it up, or like when it's reached that last point of like, all right, the pose is perfect, and make sure the interpenetrations are not too much of a big deal. Of course, that usually gets deleted with live boolean, but still try to keep everything as clean and tidy. Like I try to be a very efficient modeler, and also very clean in everything I do, so that your topology actually helps you when you're, obviously, just like animation. Posing something is really just like animation. It's just, if you have your edge loops in the right place, all deformation will be great. It'll help you as much as it can. And then you just do a little cleanup, do a little resculpture, even maybe subdivide once you've posed it again if you need to, or if you've segmented that part off, like I said, then subdivide those parts and then resculpt a little bit more, add in the detail, and then, lock it in. No audio. No audio. You guys are hearing me, right? You guys are hearing me. Yeah, I'm seeing my mic. So yeah, Comics Legend. Yeah, I'm a big Dino fan. So what do I think of them? Actually, I have one right here. It's funny you mentioned. Because I grew up with the Jurassic Park toys, the originals that were by Kenner. But Kenner got sculptures from, if I'm not mistaken, from Stan Winston. They had guys from Stan Winston actually sculpt the toys, the masters that the toys were made from. Cool. Thanks, Jones. So I think that again created a freak of nature out of me as a child, where I was just a very detail-oriented kid, and I loved the detail in the dinosaurs. I loved realism. For me, before Jurassic Park, I'm going to be the hipster who says I was into dinosaurs before Jurassic Park, but I was. I was obsessed with them, and I was obsessed with realism. And I think what kind of brought that to what really it just deepened that for me was Phil Tippett's work on this show that we got from the library on a VHS cassette. It was called just Dinosaur! Exclamation point. And Christopher Reeves, who was the original, or my generation's original Superman, he great actor, very commanding presence, great voice, super tall, like just great Superman, great actor, very masculine, great presentation, and he was the host for this documentary, I guess you could call it, about dinosaurs and our cultural fascination and obsession with them. And accompanying that show as part of it were these incredible stop motion animations, stop motion footage. I don't know what you really want to call it, I guess, but yeah, animations. um, they're these incredible stop motion puppets, go motion, I guess you call it, by Phil Tippett. And I've been lucky to meet Phil and be an acquaintance of his and thank him. Most of all, I'm just grateful I got to thank him for the incredible positive impact he made on my life as a very young child, and that his work and his level of attention to detail and realism and even the sound design and just all the thought that has gone into. If you look up dinosaur, just look up dinosaur exclamation point CBS TV show, or of course the original piece that got him that work was called Prehistoric Beast. So if you look up Prehistoric Beast by Phil Tippett, you'll find an incredibly beautiful, realistic, and frightening, like terrifying, short film about a monoclonius, which is like a ceratopsian, like a triceratops like dinosaur, but it's called monoclonius because it has one horn, mono one. Is this long horned dinosaur that ceratopsian, frilled dinosaur goes into this forest, separates from the herd, and just looking for food. And it's this beautiful, and it's all this was done on like a massive table in his garage. It's a crazy thing, which is, I mean, the lighting though, you really believe like it's obviously stop motion, but it just looks like they're outdoors, and just so much of it. And the sound design, the echoing of like the roars and the cries of the dinosaurs, and they were really smart in how they took like bird sounds and slowed them down like 10,000%, and then added reverb, and like just really smart, ahead of their time ideas of like, what do we have today that might sound like what a dinosaur might have sounded like. And they just nailed it. They just did some phenomenal work, and it's really beautiful and really intense. T-Rex eventually is stalking around the forest, finds a monoclonius, smells it out, whatever, snaps a twig. Monoclonius like jerks up, starts looking around. Then we have the perspective of the dinosaur looking around with the camera, and it just creates this intensity. Then it cries out and just puts its head right perfectly in this god ray of sunlight coming through the forest, and it long bellow, and then it kind of goes into like a hooting sound. Um, just that you hear the resonance like echo through the forest, and I'm like, God, these guys just. I mean, no wonder he was then hired initially. After he did that work, he got hired to do Dinosaur and do like all these other stop motion vignettes or featurettes for that show. And now he made a condensed version of just that, just all his work for that show, as just all the stop motion work is one piece. You can buy it as a video on my site, I think, which I did, and you can watch it on YouTube, I think, as well. But then he got from that work, he got hired by Spielberg, because Spielberg, whoever else knew Spielberg, saw that and was like, "Holy shit!" I mean, I guess George knew him too, because for those who don't know, Phil Tippett and his uh, fellow animators, stop motion animators, did a lot of the work for all the work, I guess, really, on Star Wars stop motion stuff. So the Tauntaun, the AT, the at Walkers, however you say AT, whatever. All those stop animation stuff in Star Wars. That's all Phil Tippett's work with his, fellow crews. So same guys, worked on the Prehistoric Beast and then Dinosaur, and then they were going to work on Jurassic Park. Kind of got shafted by the brilliance of Steve Spaz Williams, and then got basically rehired immediately after that to do their work in animation with the dinosaur input device, the DID, which is like basically an armature, stop motion armature with a bunch of I guess accelerometers or motion sensors that would essentially detect any movement and change in every joint, and then that would translate to the rig in the computer, and then they did a whole bunch of cleanup on that afterwards to make it really float and be smooth. But I think that's also a credit to why the first film, that attention to detail from Phil and his team and Spaz, going back and just over and over and over, as any good animator does, running an animation over and over and seeing what's wrong with it, seeing what works, and then going in and refining every little detail, and then experimenting and like slowing things down in a huge percentage to get that weight right and get the gravity, make sure the camera's in the right place to show. Spaz seems to be, and I follow him. I've met him actually during South by Southwest, and again got to thank one of my heroes for just the incredible impact they had on my life, and that's what I'm so proud of. I don't name drop these just to brag. It's just I'm so grateful that I got to meet some of these people that have made such a tremendous change in my life as a child, and positive impact, and have brought me so much joy. I mean, it's like Jurassic Park is just the film that made my life change in this deep down before I even knew what it was doing to me. It was just a perfect storm of the love interest I already had in dinosaurs and the fascination with science and paleontology and biology and nature, and then that led me into visual effects down the road, obviously. And here I am. But yeah, but it's just the brilliant work of people like Spaz and Phil Tippett. These are all guys who were creatives, who are just brilliant men who worked really hard and found a lot of joy and passion in the craft and also in the technology and study of where we were going. They invented new techniques. They created solutions to problems that we were facing at the time, which is also really exciting. I was just talking with an old buddy of mine who's also a former ZBrush guy, Solomon Blair. We were just chatting the other day. We were playing some Call of Duty and talking about life and just the just the impact and the revolutionary excitement that there was. We had both just watched. I haven't watched all the episodes, but I watched the one about Jurassic, of course. It's called Light and Magic on Disney Plus, and it's a documentary, a 6 episode documentary about George Lucas's the founding of his company, Industrial Light and Magic, which for all time has created some of the best visual effects we've ever seen, and special effects, I should say, and visual effects. Of course, now there are many companies that compete with them, but for the longest time, they were the only, like the best in the world, and they have still, and in many ways, they and the people they've hired and brought into the company have created the standards and the techniques and technology that we all in the industry use today and have grown to know. But man, they were mavericks. They were the true pioneers of their generation, of our generation, really. And there's no time like that ever again. I think I don't know that there will ever be a time of that level of innovation. I mean, maybe there will be, but I can't really. It just feels like all the changes we're seeing now in the visual effects industry are far more minute, and the gradation, the change, the granular change is so small. It's incremental compared to the leaps and giant bounds that we move forward when they were innovating at Industrial Light and Magic. Back in the I guess 80s to 90s, like late 80s. I mean 70s, of course, back when Star Wars was being made. But when we're talking about like actual like moving into CGI, we're talking like Terminator 2. Of course, The Abyss was like their first foray, but then Terminator 2 and Jurassic were the ones that went from like, okay, we got some metal here, we got liquid metal, then we have now photoreal, bleeding, sweating dinosaurs. Awesome. Oh, anyway, sorry, I'm just going down memory lane. What else do we have? Tippett's Robocane and Robocop is amazing. We should prepare for that high accurate action for everyone. Yeah, yeah. Phil's stuff is just awesome. And what's his name? The guy who his buddy. I can't think of his name right now. Craig what? Dude, the guy who designed Ed 209. Man, I love that robot. I love everything so much about it. Um, and I just love when there's biomimicry in robots. I think that's so cool. Yeah, it's a great design. Very dinosaur-like, I guess, in its legs. Very bird-like in that sense. But that the front that it has just like one gigantic like compound eye. I know it's not really that, I guess, but it's sort of like I guess that like speaker head front. The mesh-looking black mesh front. Something that's so cool and creepy about it. It's like such a cool thing. You have like two-tone metals, so you have like black on chrome or black on silver. Like on cars, it kind of looks really cool, and that mechanical, artistic design, the sense is just badass. If you ever get the chance, if any of you are out there and you ever get up to Berkeley, San Francisco area, and we're allowed to go into places again and tour, I'm so thankful. Phil gave me, a tour of his place along with his assistant, and it's just his studio. It's just amazing stuff. Like some of the statues and some of the maquettes and sculptures and not I can't even a maquette even does it disservice. Like there was this one dog. They were working for a movie that never got made, but it's about this is I guess public knowledge. This is out there. You can see photos of it. I think it was going to be called Red Dog, and it was about a robot dog and a boy who have to survive on Mars after some calamity leaves them stranded there. And it's just the premise alone sounds awesome. I'm like, dude, they need to make this movie. Like, I would love to make this. But the robot dog was just intricately designed. Craig Haynes, there we go. There's his name, Craig Haynes. And the guy who designed Ed 209, designed this dog, and it looks like it would work. But it's like a really advanced robotic dog that has like two cameras for eyes that look like blue irises and beautiful and very like that soul of the animals there. Its back has a solar panel array that's or almost like shielding, almost like the way you have like on a medieval horse kind of thing. But the whole thing's made out of like, metal and like copper tubing and like artificial muscles and solar panels and just chrome and steel and copper and solar panels. It's just like all this beautiful combination of hard surfaces with some flexible metals and just brilliant, beautiful design, incredibly intricate, and all physical, real, practical. Just oh man, that would be so awesome to see in a movie. But yeah, so look up some of that stuff if you can. I'm not sure if there's online really, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But great idea, great concept, great design. But man, it's just so cool to see what these guys came up with, and it's just I don't know. I know we have so many great artists out there now, concept designers and people with vision. It's just sad that we almost never see. I see so much great concept art and so many cool robots and creatures, and we almost never see that in movies though. We never see that in the shows that get released. They always get just like Elon says about concept cars. They always look so cool, and then you get the end product, and it's always like terrible. It's unappealing. It's toned down. It's not this adventurous, crazy, wild. Because car companies, I guess, assume that if they gave people wouldn't want something so extreme looking, and B, it also diminishes, I guess, their higher end vehicles that they want to sell for a lot more money. So if someone can get something looking really cool for like 30, $40,000, why are they going to pay, 80, 100, 200, $250,000 for something that's, just slightly cooler looking, but has a faster engine and it's a few more luxuries and amenities. Like I get that from the business standpoint, but still, I think Elon has proven that you can have your cake and eat it too in that sense. That Tesla can look, you can have an affordable car that looks great and works well, and still sell your higher end cars too. Just create tiers, but tiers don't have to be so vastly different. Anyway, yeah, just other thoughts. Design. Yeah, Ed 209's Kane. Yeah, Kane's a good design too, for sure. I'm not as big a fan of it, personally, but I acknowledge that it's still a great design. All right, so I'm holding control and then dragging here, and that duplicates your selected mesh, just in case anyone's wondering how I was doing that quickly. So then I want to flip this mirror, and then we in here. And I think Phil's been auctioning off a lot of his stuff, or he was. Kind of sad to see some of that stuff go, but then again, getting up there in his years, and I'm sure he just doesn't want all that stuff. Just I keep thinking about that too. Like I love great art, I love great sculptures. I love having artwork and having things that I admire. But none of us are going to take it with us. We're all going the same direction. We're all on the same. We're all on the same train, same boat. So it's at some point you got to realize like stuff is just stuff. It's nice to have it, but we're all like custodians of it. We're all caretakers of the stuff because it's going to be passed on or burned up or destroyed in some way. But it's going to outlive us most of the time, which is interesting. So I can see why he'd, like, all right, let's cash out some of this stuff. Let's pass it on to people who really love it and admire it. Whatever, want it. But it's still kind of like, it's just like, it's kind of sad to see some of this stuff being up for auction. It's like, I would love to buy some of it, but it's like, talking thousands, tens of thousands of dollars for some maquettes and models and whatever. Yeah. It's cool when he makes licensing agreements with good companies and they get to make replicas of some of his stuff. Like I got to hold the original Tauntaun maquette, like the original sculpture. That was like his throwaway character. He said that he never even thought would become such an iconic, beloved creature. But man, that was a cool experience to be able to really hold some history, some Star Wars Hollywood history was pretty cool to actually touch it and see it. Um, yeah, Phil's a cool guy, man. I gotta say, like I know he's portrayed, and he does, even call himself a bit of just like someone who's grumpy and just tired of the industry and whatever. But man, he's brought so many people so much joy. Uh, and he's a good guy, I gotta say, from everything I've experienced and interacted with him. And something that speaks so highly of it is when your children speak highly of you. And I think that's where I really admire him too. I mean, in a different way, I admire him for that. I didn't know I was meeting his daughter at the time, but I was when I first met him for the first time was at LA Comic Con, I think. And it was in the LA Convention Center. I'm just trying to remember what was the convention. I think it was LA Comic Con. And I was speaking to this very lovely redhead young lady, and around my age, and we were chatting, and I asked her if Phil was around. He had a booth, and like a lot of his maquettes were there, stop motion puppets, but I didn't see him. And got to talking about some of the history of the stuff and whatever, and then I asked if he was going to be around. She's like, "Oh yeah, he'll be around a little bit later." It's like, "How do you like working for him?" And she's like, "Oh, it's great, I mean, she's like, he's best. I mean, I should love working for him. He's my dad." And I was like, "Oh wow, that's awesome." And it's awesome to hear you say so many nice things about your father, because that speaks so highly of the man he is, that his children respect him and love him and admire him and have so many positive things to say, are happy to be working with him and for him. That's so cool. So to see, on top of someone being a creatively good person, a great person, a huge hero of people, he's also a very respectable human being too. That someone who's worth admiring in that sense. That's really cool. That's not the case always, So that's pretty awesome to hear from daughter. So yeah, I mean, it's just, again, just so cool to see that and able to have some of those moments. Kind of doing this stupidly. I'm sort of like leaving this, leaving the gizmo where it is and trying to adjust on this one. I should just do this instead. But sorry, this is just kind of laborious. I know it's not like the most thrilling thing. Probably get to the muscles here. Spent over an hour already just talking and pause. Oh, sorry, but Comics Legend, you asked about what did I think about the toys for the new movie. I think they're okay. I mean, I would have done certain things differently. The one thing that kind of irks me, and I don't have almost any of them, but the one that I did pick up because I thought it was, yeah, it's a cool, unique design. I was always a fan of the T Rex, the young T Rex on Kenner's line, which is probably my favorite toy that they made, which is just a great work of art. It's just a great sculpture. But this work that they've done for the Rex from Jurassic Park, it's called the Hammond Collection. Let me see if I can blow this up for you guys quickly. You guys can see what I'm talking about since I'm such a dino nerd. The sculpture work is pretty good, I gotta say, and the articulation's just kind of cool. That they actually went to the point, to the degree of making something that has all these different joints and not a lot of gimmicks. It's just posable, and they have it like a acrylic eye. People keep saying it's a glass eye. It's not glass. It's plastic. It's acrylic, but still, that's cool that they actually put that effort into it. And overall, I gotta say they did a good job for a toy. My only complaints, the feet are too big. They're just huge. And I've seen people actually making 3D printed feet that they can replace these. They can just pop these off, I guess, and put the 3D printed ones on and then paint them. So I might just try to do that myself. Just sculpt and 3D print some feet and make them more proportionate, because these are just massive. It's just like comically big. And I don't know why they do that, because it makes it feel more like a child's toy than like a nice sculpture of a toy, in the sense that it just makes it look ridiculous. If you would have the feet be proportionate, it would just look so much better. So I don't know why they do that. That's the only thing that kind of bothers me about it, annoys me, but hey, whatever. Still great work for a toy. I mean, it's some of the best that have been made, but I think it's taken this long to get to that point, which is a little sad. But I think, in my opinion, that's the best Rex that any toy has made since Kenner made the original young T Rex. The the big red T-Rex that Kenner made, which was electronic. You could squeeze it and its mouth would open and roar, and you could stomp it. You could hit its feet on the ground, and it would make like a stomping, crashing sound. That was cool, and it was actually based on. I think they actually molded one of the original maquettes to make that of the T-Rex, but its proportions were pretty off compared to what we saw in the film and the CGI. The snout's really long, and so it kind of looks alligatorish, a little weird. Still, like, it's a nice little. The sculpture details great on that too, and it's cool they had the rubber skin, which I always loved. The realistic dinosaur skin is what they called it. I always thought that was great as a kid. I always loved that kind of stuff. And I wish that that's the other thing they would do for this generation of kids for these toys. Like, they have the neck part is actually rubber and the tail is rubber, but everything else is hard plastic. And I always just thought it was so cool that things felt a bit more real when they had like a nice silicone or rubber the entire body except for like the arms that were hard plastic, and the feet. Like at a fold of skin in the knee, they made it transition to hard plastic. So that design choice was really well done. I thought the originals, just beautiful artwork, and is what I look at it as. Because yeah, I played with them when I was 10, but it's probably one of the only toys that I've held on to and actually like repurchased from eBay. It's like a mint one. Only one of the few things I have is that's you call a toy other than this one that's in my house today as an adult, and it just sits on a shelf. It's just a nice work of art, a sculpture that I admire, because they were so well done, so well sculpted, and the paint jobs are okay, but even though they're minimal, they did a lot with a little. They were very efficient creatively in how they painted stripes on and how they painted the eyes and whatever. They did a great job. So Kenner really, well, Legacy, I guess you could say, or Stan Winston. Those guys, whoever sculpted it, Stan Winston, the young T Rex, it's more proportionately accurate to what you see in the other dinosaurs that they made. But anyway, so yeah, I think Mattel, whoever did this T Rex, they nailed it. Uh, but anyway, so that's a long answer to a past question. Oh, is it posed already? Sorry, yeah, Imperial Fist. Yeah, I haven't backed out in a while. So for anyone who's joined, yeah, this is posed already. Because I had it on a rig that was already equipped with all the musculature and everything else. But I feel like some of these muscles definitely have like imploded or collapsed inward. I don't think, from what I've seen from this footage and the Pure F stuff that tap off. Pure F images I have over here. Yeah, the sunlight, you can see the shadow here. This whole area, like the deltoid into the bicep and tricep, it's bulging out more. It's not like sucked in against a scapula like this 3D model has that I'm working on right now. Like all of these shots here, you still see some form that's not imploded, but it's round. You have the muscle shape that's chunks of meat, and the model simulated incorrectly, I guess. The muscles collapsed on themselves to some degree. So again, Ziva is a great simulator. I don't think it's 100% perfect, but that's where the eye, the human element comes into it, and you have to hand touch things and refine things. That's where again, we're knowing or having good reference of anatomy for this animal is, you know, huge, critical. So yeah, I'm going to touch up the muscles there in a little bit. Just finishing up the claws, and we're at like almost 130. So about 2 day here. Like here's another issue. I didn't notice this until now. There's some interpenetration right here with this toe. That whole area here that's going to be squished in there. So I'm going to fix that. Roll. Isolate this. Yeah, that. blur this a little bit. So we're gonna blur mask. Oh, and drop it down a subdivision level. Always helps. Now rotate the guy. Blur that mask a little bit more. Shrink it. Then I'm gonna move it. Oh, a little off. Now I think I'm gonna actually rotate it in so it's against the other toes. Well, in this center one, and it'll rotate it along the axis that you have selected. This helpful little tip in case you know. And that intersection here, I just smooth those out a little bit. Actually, I might rotate it up a little bit. Here, I want to add some, because that area you're not going to be looking into the crack of the toe so much because I'm probably going to sculpt in some fur over that eventually. So take off the mask and smooth out. If you were to own one movie prop, would it be like magic? Oh yeah, BR Hacker. I was just talking about it. Yeah, I mean I saw the last episode because I went to the straight to the one that was about Jurassic because that's the film I'm the biggest fan of. But I need to go back and watch the first five. Not as much as a fan of Star Wars, but I am very curious to see how, like, Industrial Light Magic really evolved to where it is, or glory days. Um, well, thank you. I can't take all the credit though. The base mesh was done by Ziva, artists at Ziva, and then I posed it through an animation process, and then now I've been refining it. So I can't take all the credit. A lie. Um, yeah, that's exactly what I did. Imra, Imra. How you say your name? Sorry. So if I could own one movie prop, what would it be? Man, that's tough. And I mean, from all I know, I've seen some great footage from Stan Winston Studio that is of a T-Rex puppet that they were actually testing, where they had, I think it was Chris Swift. He had his hands in the feet, and he was walking the puppet. And they were just testing to see how they could use puppetry, maybe, and then like digitally remove the poles and other things that were connecting it, so that they could use puppetry to make a wide shot of the Rex walk, and that was cool. Something like that would be awesome to own, but I think it was made out of foam latex, so it would probably be disintegrated by now. Um, man, I mean, an original, like something that was molded from the original cast, I should say, from the original molds, like the Velociraptor heads, the full sized, the mold they used for the latex skin for the raptors in the original Jurassic. That would be, and I've seen the Chronicle Collectibles head. It's horrid in my opinion, sadly to say. And this is agreement even from Glenn McIntosh, who's lead animation supervisor for like all the Jurassic films since Jurassic Park 3. He's a super Jurassic dino nerd like me, like super obsessed, and has tons of stuff. Hired me to sculpt things for him, and hired me to sculpt things for directors and producers for the Jurassic films too. So we're fanatics. We're brothers in fanaticism when it comes to the Jurassic dinosaurs. But the Raptor head that Chronicle Collectibles sold, just not. They molded a foam latex cast head of the one of the original molds of the raptor heads, which is what I would like, but it was deformed. So they molded something that was already soft. They cast something, molded something that was soft and already deformed. So its lips look more like beak-like. It doesn't look like anything like it does in the movie, because in the movie that foam latex was adhered, it was connected to an underlying endoskeleton, animatronic endoskeleton, plastics, metal and other pieces. And that was all, the skin was held tight against that to give it its proper form. The casting of it became this, whenever they did it, it had deformed. So you had like the lips pointing outward, and then the ridges around the eyes are kind of like droopy, and the eyes are kind of bugging out way too much. So it's just missing a lot of that solid form, the proper form that was seen in the movie. So I kind of want something that doesn't quite exist, I guess, which is why I went ahead and sort of made my own Raptor, with a certain level of fanaticism, like detail that is micro, doing a lot of these like finer toned areas. And this is for something that's only ever been at the most 1/6 scale, so 1 foot tall. Is the biggest version of these I've made. So if I was going to make something that actually, which I could, I guess, I just haven't gone to that level of, haven't gone to quite that level of just ambition for it. But if I really wanted to, yeah, I could just, you know, segment this into parts and then, like just make a bust. I probably, maybe one day I will, because I know that my Raptor is one of the most accurate Raptors screen wise than anything that's ever been made, mass produced, statue wise or collectibles or anything. And Chronicle wanted to buy my Raptor model off of me at one point, and I did some work for them on blue. They gave me ILM's blue to work on, so the Raptor from Jurassic World, and I busted my ass recreating the. I mean, it was the model, but it was without any detail. It was super smooth. But they used I used the maps from the displacement maps and a bunch of other things, and recreated the sculptural detail from the movie. And so it was really, it was ILM's asset. I really recreated that. Um, so I've done work, at that level, but and or seen the work that other people have done at that level too. But anyway, yeah. So I would love to probably just. I know that this is probably as close as I'll get to ever really maybe having anything from the original films that were the final film version and not the maquettes. Like I got the Horizon models when I was younger. I still have them in boxes somewhere. And the Horizon models, for those who don't know, like Horizon's this model company that makes back in the day. I don't think they exist anymore. They had a deal with Stan Winston's studio, and they molded the maquettes that Stan Winston, one of the many sets of maquettes that Stan Winston made for Steven Spielberg and for the producers to see, and also as reference for the artists to make the full-sized versions for Jurassic Park. So they molded maquettes, which changed between the sculptural detail and even proportions changed from what the maquettes were to the final animatronic robots, dinosaurs you see in the movie. And there's a little bit of a discrepancy slightly between what you see in the movie animatronics and the CGI, because the CGI guys were, what I understood, were using a lot of scans of the maquettes, and I think they had to adjust things, even the computer, to match the animatronics. So there was a bit, there's a bit of like little differences when you look at the animatronics and the CG. Proportionately slight differences, texture differences, like super nerd stuff. Most people would never notice, never care. But me being the nerd, I obviously picked up on a lot of that. So this is sculpted off of photos before the Raptors were painted, off of like the final sculptures that were then cast for the skins that were then painted and placed on the animatronics. So this Raptor, amongst others, is probably the most screen accurate that anyone's ever made. I'm, of course, tooting my own horn, but I have yet to see anyone make anything that's got the right amount of volume and proportions and just everything kind of in this right place. But no one was paying me to do this. It was a passion project, so I just did it out of a level of fanaticism and love, and really trying to get every single line, wrinkle, scale, proportion, curvature of the snout, the ridge of the eyes, whatever this is called, the fenestral ridge, all that stuff. It's just stupid level of fanaticism for me. But and I eventually would love to do a T-Rex. I would love to do that. But what is his name? Getting his name, Romeo or Romero. He's a French, I think, or French, or is he Italian? Anyway, an artist who did the incredible sculpture that I own of the T-Rex Rotunda. If you look at Sideshow Collectibles, I think Prime One made it though. Sideshow distributed it. Prime One made this incredible T-Rex rotunda T-Rex versus the Raptors sculpture from that iconic scene at the very end when the T-Rex defeats all the Raptors and roars and the banner falls down. That exact pose he replicated, and he's probably the artist who has the most accurate T-Rex that I've ever seen, and it's incredible. He matched the animatronic T-Rex as best he could, and I think he got scans. He got the privilege to scan 3D scan the some maquettes, I believe, and then he referenced a lot of imagery, and he's a great artist, an amazing artist. And his Rex is, and his Triceratops too. I would argue I'd compete with my Raptors and his. I would argue mine are slightly more accurate, but his are incredibly good looking too. Um, but his Rex, man, is just gorgeous, absolutely beautiful, and the sculpture I have that they made of his work is just wow, just, mwah. Chef's kiss, man, just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous statue. So anyway, so what movie prop would I want? Yeah, I mean, I guess another one that would be realistic that's actually out there that I think Phil actually sold or offered up for auction, which is kind of sad. It was one of the original gifted Raptor maquettes that Stan Winston produced. They produced a bunch, and they gave them all to people who are the chief, like staff, key staff on Jurassic. I would love to own one of those, just because the artistry, the details, just you would never get a collectible. I don't think you get a mass-produced collectible with that level of quality because it was painted by people at Stan Winston. It was modeled and sculpted and cast and painted by Stan Winston artists. So I mean that's as authentic as you're going to get to a really beautiful maquette. And so he had a gorgeous Raptor maquette that I think he auctioned off now or is up for auction. But again, it would be way more money than I could afford. It'd be like an annual salary cost, It'd be like over six figures for one of those maquettes or close to it. And I just obviously I'm not rich, so I can't afford that. Um, Sadly, would love to, because it means so much to my life, but to my artistic life. But yeah. So anyway, sorry, that's a long answer to your question. Sorry, missing some of these other questions here in the chat. Let me very uh can't draw with a lot of difficulty. The mouse, we can't do it. Tablet, Cheetah finish. Thanks. Yeah, you always need a tablet, guys, for sure. If you're trying to do anything in ZBrush with a mouse, it's not the way to go. You need a tablet. You need either a Wacom or an Sense Sense Labs. All right, Sense Labs. Yeah, a lot of people from Wacom founded this company, Sense Labs, and I don't have it set up right now because I just moved and everything's kind of still in the process of unpacking. But the yeah, Sense Labs basically is competition for Wacom, and in my opinion, I think it's almost better designed and cheaper. I mean, more affordable, but high quality materials, metal and plastic, gorgeous, gorgeous tablets, and they have more stuff coming out. So they're awesome. Yeah, definitely get a tablet. Sure. Or Cintiq. When you're concepting characters, do you worry about anatomy or just think about visual design fundamentals? Both. I mean, I don't worry too much about anatomy because if you're just concepting, just doing rough, you're doing rough sketches, rough drafts, rough sculpts. So you just basic proportions and basic volume is fine, and then you refine all the anatomy later. It's not something that you need to really put too much effort in at the beginning. Necessarily, that's something that's details. Wow, that looks awesome. Thank you. Accurate to original. Thank you. Can you imagine Winston artists doing all that by hand? Yeah, I mean, a lot of work. A lot of work. But I mean, it's kind of cool because you're working on something that you see coming together with multiple artists because they have three or four people sculpting on the same creature and then they trade sides so that things balance out. And I mean, that would be such a fun experience, I would think. Be working on something like at that time too, where it's like a Spielberg movie, his name, his brand, it carries so much weight. It has so much quality because that's why it carries so much weight because it has so much quality. And knowing, if you read the book by Crichton, and you do what you were working on, you'd be like, damn, this is going to be something special. This is something special. It's going to be awesome. Of course, they didn't know how awesome it was going to be, but still, to have been in that moment in time, like, oh, I would have, I would have given almost anything. I feel like I was just born too late. We'll talk about that with Saul too. We both felt like we would have been. We identify a lot with someone like Spaz and Mark Dupay and others because we are people who love learning and innovating and exploring and pushing the envelope, and that's definitely my lean, is to go to those levels of like, well, let's just try and push this machine. Like, let me push this 3D printer to go as far as it can. Let me see what I can really do if I just have the time. Like, just don't limit me with anything. Just let me have time and the resources, and I'll give you something glorified. I will give you something that will be the best, or at least one of the best ever. That's how I operate. That's how my brain works. That's the level of attention to detail and quality that I want to put behind something that I love or believe in. Or if the money's just right, and the hired gun mentality. If you're paying enough, like, yeah, of course, it's like, you're gonna get 100% the absolute best. Sadly, a lot of times budgets and time constrain artists to not be able to blow stuff out of the water because there's just not enough time. You're only one person, you're only human. You have to sleep, you have to eat, you have family or a pet or something else to do. You need your mental release. You can't be, as much as I love sculpting, I think part of the reason why I haven't done a ton of streaming at all or a free like personal project sculpting for a while has been just get burned out from just doing so much work for films or other studios projects that your your level of attention and endurance for this kind of work, it has its limits. You're a human being. You need to rest. You need to have your focus go somewhere else and not just be staring at screens all day, no matter what it is. You definitely just your brain needs that break. And I think I just sort of I wouldn't say burned out because that's like if I was truly burned out, I wouldn't be doing this right now or have any interest in doing stuff down the road. But it's just your brain just needs a break. That's part of it. So this pad, as you can see, this pad's got a bit deformed. Like they would never be that deformed from the animal just running. I mean, you might have a little bit of compression that would be sort of easing up before it hit the ground again. But this level of like warping is a bit extreme. So again, the rig wasn't so detailed that it was keeping all the tissues accurate to where they should be. It was just showing the general flow of where the muscles would be. But even that, they, like I said, deflated a bit. So, excuse me, you need to have a pretty advanced rig to have all these elements really, hold. And even so, I think you probably would be doing shot like what I'm doing right now is almost like what we are doing for shot modeling for like Spider-Man. Same thing as what I did. Like this is kind of the same work I did for Spider-Man, except it was all in Maya for the most part. For what we were doing in that case, we were using mudbox brushes and tools. Sorry, editor. But that's what we were doing for Spider-Man. But a lot of the artwork and everything, of course, started in ZBrush, 100%. But what we had to operate in Maya for the shot modeling because the rig and everything is in Maya, so we can't to take it out into ZBrush and then do that work and then bring it back into Maya. There'd be too much back and forth, and you could easily change, or there could be a slight shifting in some of the points, and then that would break the whole connection. So it has had to all stay in Maya, just out of necessity from the software's usage. But anyway, still, this is the same kind of exact techniques that we were doing. You touch up something that collapsed or that imploded or that was interpenetrating, and then once you're done, you would create these marks and bridges for beginning of this blend shape, peak of it, die off or diminish slower over time. Like you'd have to make all these judgment calls by going through frames, scrubbing through the animation and seeing how things held, how they deformed, how maybe one blend shape would amplify another one too much, so then you have to kill that one or like readjust its graphs on on the editor. There's all these like very, it's not even per shot, it's per second per frame sometimes of deformation and sculptural detail and what is out of frame, out of camera view where you don't really have to worry about it, versus if there's a twist or rotation, then you have to worry about everything because it's all going to be in the shot. So there's a lot of work. I mean, we again, that's why I think I just have abstained from doing many things publicly with streaming or ZBrush, because it's just, you reach a certain pinnacle of something and you're almost like, all right, I achieved what I more maybe than I thought I would want to achieve, and now I'm like, I need a mental break, not touch some of this stuff for a while because my brain is just exhausted. the motivation might not be there at the time, you know. Way. Sorry, that's a long answer too. Um, and I noticed the difference as well, especially in the T-Rex. Yeah, sculpting individual frames for Spider-Man. Yes, sir. We're sculpting, shot modeling, individual shots, individual frames at times where, you know, it'd be a couple frames, you'd sculpt for that couple frames and then have the pose, then blend shapes would have to move into another set of blend shapes. So you'd have, you know, yeah, a lot of work. Yeah. Crazy. I guess that's why the movie has to, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, they, toward the end of it, man, it was just like money was not an object so much as just getting the work done. You know, it was like whoever wants overtime, you got the overtime. Just go. But I think that's also where, you know, that level of you're seeing a lot more articles come out, you know, negatively. Now I'll say that I didn't really have a bad experience necessarily working on oh boy, that's one in there. I didn't really have a tremendously negative experience working for Marvel via Digital Domain. Digital Domain did a good job of making sure that artists were done after 8 hours, would stop, or, you know, if you had to do overtime, you'd be allowed to, but you have to make sure it's okayed by your manager. And there's a lot of like protocols and safety measures to some degree to try to have everyone have a good work-life balance as much as possible. We all busted ass and worked really hard and put in a lot of overtime toward the end because we had to. Now I'm not much sure what else I could really say without, you know, saying anything wrong or out of beyond breaching any kind of NDA. But we worked hard. We worked very hard, and it didn't feel like it was slave labor or like, you know, dishonest, or there was any lack of passion for our humanity. But that's what I'm saying is all filtered through, you know, lead artists and producers that were above me that were making sure that the art team was doing their work well, but not killing themselves. So we definitely worked hard. We definitely had a lot of overtime for the last few weeks. You know, we were working on it until I was working on it until about the end of November, right up to Thanksgiving. Basically, I was working on Spider-Man. So yeah, a lot of work, a lot of work. But again, like I said, I'm just proud that it came out to be what it is, and it's a great movie, great story. That's where it all comes down to, though. I mean, all the hard work we put into it is not too dissimilar from the hard work that anyone else puts into a lot of other movies, heavy visual effects, and have human characters or creatures. Um, it's just sad that that same level of work can go into a film that has some terrible writing, and because it has terrible writing, it's a bad movie, so to speak. You know, it gets rated badly by audiences and or critics or both, and maybe deservedly so because the writing is terrible. But it doesn't. That doesn't really. It does and it doesn't. Sadly, ascribe to the work the artist did, because the artist's work is good, but it's like anything. Like Spielberg says, and everyone else who has a brain, visual effects have to service the story. Logical. Um, you know, there was a time very early on when visual effects were so new that you could just have some great visual effects and people would still love the movie because they saw something so unique that they'd never seen. But now, where we really can basically produce just about anything we can imagine on screen and have it look real or look however they want it to look, it's more than ever about story. You know, good writing, good storytelling, mature, intelligent, emotionally engaging storytelling, and storytelling that's, you know, spectacular and that takes you somewhere and excites you and moves you. Like that's what it's all about. You know, that's why I want to do the films I want to make. Working visual effects is fine. It's nice. It's a nice way to make a living, I guess. In some ways, it can be very stressful at times too, though. You can feel like you're overworked. You can be overworked. Many studios do have poor management, and a lot of this comes down to that. It comes down to poor management. People who are and lack of vision, I think too. There are times where directors will have very little vision or not even have the script fully fleshed out, and yet they rely on like you know, previs to come up with whole action sequences. And like the script might say, and then they fight, and that's it. The whole fight sequence, every bit of choreography, everything you see, especially if it's CG, but even if it's not CG, guess who does that? People like myself and others, the previs artists, the post-viz artists, and anyone who has a good idea, and the people who aren't paid as writers or choreographers or fight designers or whatever else title you give them, people who are artists, who are CG artists, are designing whole fight sequences. It's not, sometimes it's not in the script. So that's a big thing for me. That's an annoyance, and that's sort of it feels like it's a bit of an injustice because those people who come up with those ideas and that work should be compensated handsomely for designing whole sequences that the director never conceived of. So it's like right there, there's like that could easily bleed into some lawsuits, I guess, for some people who did that kind of work if they really wanted to. But it would call. I mean, you're going up against David against Goliath. They'd be going up against huge companies with massive lawyers and huge budgets. So it's like I don't know how they win. But from a truly just standpoint, there's definitely money to be shared with people who really created work that earned that studio or that company millions or billions of dollars because they came up with whole sequences that weren't in the script. It just said, then they fight, figure it out. Like you could say that's what they're paid to do, but it's like that seems like a gray area. It's like, is that really what they were paid to do, or are they paid to like create something and then, create something that was already written, designed to some degree, manifested? Like there's always like that. There's like that the ether. There's stuff in the ether where it's like, well, how much of this was like concretely designed by one person, or was it a mixture of multiple people's ideas coming together? But still, it's like if you're designing whole sequences that aren't in the script, that I think should be an area where there's some sort of extra compensation or residuals for those people, for those artists. It's only fair. Like it only seems very reasonable, rational, fair, logical. But say la vie, life isn't fair, unfortunately. Anyway, we're just about at 2 o'clock. Let me see what other questions we got here. At least we got the claws in there, and we got a toe fixed, and you guys can see here a bit of the kitty. We'll work on the muscles next time. I think I might give it a slight lean too. Having a little bit of lean gives it that much more energy when you're like looking at it like this, like straight on. A little bit of that lean just gives a little bit more of that energy, like it's about to like turn a corner or something. Cool. The Comics Legends asks, "Have you experienced burnout working in the industry?" Yeah, I mean to a degree, I would say. Yeah, like I said earlier, it's money to time ratio at this point, and that's where my focus is becoming like more of creative director because I want to be a writer director, and that's what I'm working on. But in order to even have that time and energy to push that work of mine, personal work forward for short films, I need a mental break. I need to have time to rest, and money to survive, just to pay bills and eat and have a life. I'm not looking for extreme luxury. I'm not asking for, you know what I mean? I'm not a greedy person. I want to just create great work, great art. Not so much for someone else anymore as for myself, for the world, for the people, for the public to experience. That's my heart. So that means that passion is becoming more affirmed in my life and deeper rooted, and more forces behind that now, more energy and time to devoted to that. But that also means then that equally I struggle with frustration when I'm devoting time and energy and resources to someone else's dream and vision. Um, and it's fine; they have every right to do that and hire the companies they are doing, and and a lot of artists are happy to help them make their vision a reality. That's just not where my heart is anymore. That I'll do it because I have to at times, because I have to survive, I have to pay bills, I have to eat. But if I have a choice, or if I can, and as I'm pushing toward, if I can have any way to just make more income than what visual effects will service me, uh, to have more free time. So in other words, more income for less effort. That's where my mind and my heart are now, because I need to have that time free to invest in what I really want to do with my life. So yeah, there's a definite struggle there, but I think it's slightly different for me than it is for other artists who maybe are happy and just perpetually want to just create art for other films and other people, for other people's visions to be a reality. But for me, it's really becoming a point of where I have to really be smart and judicial about what projects I accept, who I'm working for, and what it will afford me down the line, both of time and of experience. You know, if something is paying decently, of course, but I'm also learning some valuable skills and software that I didn't know before. That's, you know, if I see it that will service my future goals, then that's really appealing to me, more appealing to me than if it was just, oh, just do something else like you've done for every other show before. It's basically like it becomes then an exercise that I'm being paid to do, and one that I may not enjoy, especially if the money is not that good, which I just wouldn't accept then, you know. But that's the life of being a freelancer, which is a lot of artists. A lot of us aren't staffed, even though we'd like to be, and it's not even because the companies don't want to staff us. It's simply that they don't. Their company, the people that work, you know, the highest of the company, want to keep their margins as low as possible, and so that means they send that work that would be my staff position for a company that's being sent to their branch in Vancouver or their branch in Toronto or their branch in England or Singapore or Beijing or wherever else, and they're getting basically 2 to 1, or at least they were at the time, dollars. You know, so why are they going to pay someone in America $1 for 1 hour when they can get 2 hours for $1? You know, it's just, that's not a literal one-to-one example, but you know what I mean. Like, you're getting almost double the value of your money spent overseas than you are hiring people here in California, which is another frustration. There's a lot of visual effects houses, the biggest ones with the coolest characters and projects or whatever, they always outsource that to foreign countries, and they don't keep it even, not even in the country, much less in LA. So it's really frustrating in that sense. Seems really unfair, but again, such is life. Which is, again, it's like, you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. That's what I keep learning more and more. It's like, all right, F it, I'll do it myself. I'll show you. It's like, fine, you know, you guys don't want to trust me, you don't believe me, you don't want to invest in me. Show you what you'll, you know, what you'll get from me. But it's, I'm doing it my way. I'm doing my thing. You know, that's what you're gonna pay for, or we're not doing business. um, I miss real animatronics, the ones in JP and movies nowadays. Yeah, there's so many awesome movies. Exactly, I agree completely. Eternal. Yeah, I I miss the '90s tremendously. I mean, it's not even that I want to go back so much as, I mean, I would love to go back and re-experience some of that stuff. I would even love to just go back, even as my mind is now, just to be able to fly in the wall, just to watch this all again, just to watch people experience some of that stuff for the first time. That just seeing other people enjoy. I would love to see myself. I would love to see. I wish someone could have videoed my life, and like when I was a 10-year-old, and what my facial expressions were, like what was my reaction, not from the YouTube reaction kind of mindset, but just a window into your life as an adult, seeing yourself as a child, and just understanding, just to understand yourself more, and to see how that, to see those sparks, to see those neural connections happen at that moment, to see like, wow, that was the moment when X triggered in my brain. That was the moment when this snowballed. This would be the snowball, you know, that would create this massive mound of motivation and momentum in my life years later. Like, that would be really cool to see that. Who knows? Maybe when we die, we'll get to rewind something. um, yeah, but yeah, I miss the '90s, man. Independence Day, Jurassic Park, yeah. I mean, even The Fly. Oh man, gory, but man, that's a classic. Sincerely wish I had come to these realizations much earlier in my career. The greatest success. Thank you, Lamont. We're all coming to realizations at some point in life, and I think whenever you come to them, you always wish you came to them sooner, because you're finding a revelation or a truth that, you know, you wish you knew sooner, because it's something that's real, it's true, that's, this is really how you feel, or you're realizing this is how the world is. And it's always that feeling of kind of a bit of regret. You're like, oh, why didn't I learn this lesson sooner? You know, why did I have to learn the hard way? Life. Again, you can either beat yourself up over it, or just be like, damn, that sucks. All right, let's move on. Let's move forward. Let's persevere. Um, is it possible to work remote? LA is an expensive area to live. Yeah, for sure. Affordable. Yeah, I've been looking at Texas more and more, honestly. But sadly, there are a lot of companies in the on the West Coast and in LA that only will hire people who live in that time zone, or in Los Angeles or in California, which is lame, which is stupid. But I mean, maybe if I can establish just like a base of residency here, you know what I mean? Like just a mailbox essentially. Maybe I guess that'll work. I don't know. But I'm also looking at, like I said, I'm working with Space Interactions now, space industry where we can work anywhere in the world for this company, and I'm hired as their creative director. A lot of work to do right now, actually, for them. And you know, government contracts are pretty generous, pretty cool. So hopefully that'll be enough where I'll be sitting more comfortably financially, where it won't be so stressful to having to be chasing other work, and I can just have this one gig, this one job for a long time and direct other artists and have more free time to invest in my own stuff. Talk about me doing a documentary with them, for the company as well on space debris, whatnot. And again, that's something I'll be like the writer director of. Great, again, for my own just credits and experience. So there's a lot of forward motion for me personally in where I want to go. Uh, so I may not quite move, but I mean, yeah, I mean, aside from that, personal stuff on loving and disliking California for other reasons. But the weather's hard to beat, man. The sun's beautiful here. I live like a mile and a half away from the water, the ocean, so it's hard to beat that. But if I could find something like that in Texas, then I might consider that. But we'll see. Everything is just in the air right now. But I'm not. I just moved to this house, so I'm not like picking up and leaving anytime soon, unless some catastrophic stuff happens in this state. We'll see. I was happy I did miss another stream. Actually, turning my wife into a superhero in ZBrush right now. Thanks for all your help, Mr. Billy. Oh, sure, of course. That's awesome. You're turning your wife into a superhero. That's so cool. Where can we see your work? Can you post your Instagram or wherever you're gonna post your wife superhero? I'm gonna post that in the comments. That'd be cool in the chat. We're at 2:04, so I gotta go here. I'm not sure if there's anyone on after me. I don't think so, but I'm gonna bail. Do you ever read to apologize when working for 3D printing? Sort of. I mean, do I ever read to apologize? Yeah. I mean, sure. Don't typically. I try if I'm working on something myself, I'll try to operate with good topology from the very beginning. So I'll model efficiently from the beginning. And then if I have to reach apologize, yeah, then I'll, if someone hands me, like I worked on a bunch of stuff for Disney Toys in the past, and I got insanely subdivided models by people, I guess, who artists didn't know how to properly model and sculpt efficiently in ZBrush, and so they subdivided it to get detail that they wanted instead of modeling efficiently and using and playing into the topology. They just subdivided insane levels, like super high, like over 100 million for stuff that didn't need it. So yeah, that required some retopology for sure. But that's from working with models and things that should not have been done that way. Anyway, let's see here. Last, any tips on getting into the toy industry? What do they look for in portfolio? Um, I'd say the tips that I will give, and this is probably the last thing I'll do. Just double check. I don't. I feel bad because I haven't looked actually to see if there was anyone after me. I should have checked that. Important. Um, okay. Phew. Aura's on, but he's on at 7, so I got time. Okay. Phew. Good to know. Sorry. Oops. Too busy. So any tips getting in the toy industry? Toy industry, I mean, it's not too dissimilar from the industry, from the entertainment industry, films. Um, so I guess my advice would be the same as and anyone who knows me or seen my streams know this, my 3 points kind of easy, quick answer to this question for anyone who wants to get into the entertainment industry or into toys or films or whatever. First rule is, of course, it's like a no-brainer, but be exceptional at what you want to do. So if you love animals, be a great animal sculptor. Love characters of a certain brand, have that in your portfolio. Have some examples, even if it's just one or two. Again, you don't need a huge portfolio and you don't need tons of examples of what you want to do. You have one or two good ones, and that, but also that, I mean, like you sculpt the whole character, have some great turnarounds, have some great, turntable renders, or 3D prints. If you have a 3D printer or a friend who has a good 3D printer and you want to get in toys, have a great prototype made and show the CG model right next to the the 3D printed model prototype. So be excellent at whatever you want to do. Be exceptional. Look at the best of the best and top them or match them at least. Compete with the people that you admire. As much as you admire your heroes, make work that's as good or better than theirs, if you can. And in some cases, I think you really can succeed in making stuff even more detailed or better if you're already skilled at your skill. I mean, you're skilled at your craft. Then the one thing you have over them is their professional work had a constraint on budget and had a constraint on time, and yet they still probably made something kick ass. But you don't have a constraint. You don't need to necessarily. If you're young and you should have time. You should have a lot of time. You may not have a lot of money, but if you at least have the software and the skills to make something great, the one asset you have more of at the moment than they do, most likely, is time. Excuse me. So you'll be able to spend more time crafting something incredible. One up them, make something that's very similar, or even maybe copy, in a sense, not copy directly. You know what I mean? Obviously, give credit where it's due. But if you're making a famous character, make a Wolverine that's the ultimate Wolverine. Whatever. Like, just spend inordinate amount of time to make it look kick ass. People will know that you poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into something. It'll show. If you really put that time and energy intelligently into something, it will show. They'll also know that they can't expect that to be the deliverable every time for something that is under a time constraint and or a limited budget. So don't worry about them being like expecting you to deliver the impossible in a short amount of time. Some companies, some people are asinine. They are, they don't have a touch in reality. But most companies who are decent and know what artists can produce and have seen a steady flow of people in their company and how they work will understand what they can expect of you. But your portfolio needs to show your best. It needs to show what you can achieve, when you want to, out of passion, out of interest, and out of professionalism. So be excellent at what you do is point number one. Number two, be good with people. Be able to have a dialogue with people about other things than what you're interested in. Like anyone who's obsessed with sports can talk all day about sports. They can talk about their favorite player and their stats and their history and all that stuff. And that's fine and dandy. We all have our passions. We all have our love and interests, but not everyone shares those. So for younger artists who might be, maybe a lot of us are introverted. I mean, I would consider myself an extroverted introvert, I guess. Sort of. I mean, I am primarily an introvert, meaning I'm not shy. A lot of people conflate introvert with being shy. I'm a very talkative person. I'm very outgoing. But as I've gotten older and as I've matured, I enjoy and desire less time with many people, less time being around a lot of people, because there's a lot of things I want to do that also inherently require me to be alone, or at least around very few people and very focused on what I want to do. So, when you're younger, I think you're also typically, a lot of younger people are more gregarious, but also I think it's very common for a lot of younger artists to consistently be introverted. And by that, I mean, we get our energy from focusing on single projects, on isolated things. And that's what keeps our attention and makes us happy. It gives us a dopamine hit. It gives us a certain level of life fulfillment and satisfaction. So that's great. But in the real world, in reality, even though now with remote work keeping us more segregated, more isolated, even more so, I think, in a sense, you have to be good with people. However that looks. I mean, if you're professional in your emails and you're pleasant, good etiquette in letter writing, like fundamentals from stuff from English when we were kids in high school or in junior high. You have to understand some of those basic fundamentals, and you'll most people, I think, a lot of people, you'd be surprised how many people don't get some of this, but good etiquette is important. Basic decorum, basic professionalism, important. And being a pleasant person, being somebody who people want to be around and people want to work with is important. If you're really awkward or very uncomfortable or very unprofessional or very rude, you're not going to win points with people, and especially not other professionals who want someone who, at times there might be a point in life where they're in the company where they're just like, oh, we just need someone who's an efficient robot. We just need someone who's a human being who can do this work like a machine. That'll happen, and there are companies who treat people that way, but you don't want to be treated that way, and companies should not be treating people, human beings, that way. We should all be obviously treated respectfully and fairly, and with basic dignity, of course, no matter who or what you are. um, but that being said, if you want to score points with places you want to work, you need to be, as much as you can, someone who can have a great conversation with someone else, who's pleasant, who smiles, who's confident, looks someone in the eye, shakes their hand firmly, um, you know, can deliver a good elevator pitch for yourself, and can just have a good conversation about anything else in life other than just what you most likely can talk a lot about, which is your art, your interests, and what you want to do. That's fine, but like I said, be relatable. Basically, being good with people, right? Be a pleasant person, be someone that someone else wants to be around, and try to emulate the things you admire in other people. If you're struggling with like, how do I be more likable? How do I have people like me more? Of course, being authentic is an important thing, but then it's like anything. It's like be yourself. Unless yourself is a jerk, then don't don't be yourself. Work on. It's like it's introspective stuff, right? Looking within and saying, how can I improve on myself? What edges are rough on me that I maybe could use some refinement and development or maturity or sophistication, or just improving on yourself. Like think about yourself in really a little bit, and a little bit of self criticism is good, right? Not to the point of depression or putting yourself down. Mental health is crucial, but some of that development requires you to be introspective and requires some self criticism and some self reflection and refinement. So being good with people comes from, you know, being good with yourself, I guess, in some ways. And then the third point, the last point, is be lucky. And I would say that with tongue in cheek, because no one can really make you, in a sense, yes, but no. I mean, like when you think of lucky, it's just random happy events happening to you. That's not really realistic, obviously. Being lucky really means like luck favors the prepared, right? The Boy Scout marching song, always be prepared. uh, and to be prepared, to be lucky means if you have those first 2 points that I mentioned, if you're great at what you do and you're really good with people, the only thing you're missing is the opportunity. So when you have that literal moment in the elevator and someone happens to strike up a conversation, or you happen to strike up a conversation with someone that you may or may not know is in a place and position of potential to hire you or to connect you with someone who could want to hire you in said industry, you have to have your ducks in a row. You have to be excellent at what you do. So you have your portfolio or some images ready on your phone in a little folder somewhere. And you are able to speak well with people and able to have a pleasant conversation and drop a joke or just funny circumstantial comment, like on the situation at hand or something you both just saw. You both shared an experience and you happen to have a thing to relate to them about now, But if you're excellent at what you do and you're good with people, then that opportunity you'll find yourself in opportunities. And that comes from also putting yourself in positions to be lucky. Go to a good convention, go to a good networking event, research who are good people to network with on LinkedIn. Ask people who you know who are good at what they do, who maybe are in the positions that you'd want to be in. How did they get there? What was the circumstance? A lot of it is through networking. Like so much of life, like the cliche says, it's not about so much what you know, but who you know, right? Of course, in our industry, you have to be technically proficient. You have to be able to be good at your skills. But the other half of that is like, yeah, networking is crucial. So networking is essentially being good with people, being able to dialogue and pleasantly interact with others, and then them happening to like you and then saying, hey, you know what? We need your skills, someone like you in this company, or a friend of mine is looking for someone like you, and they've been looking for someone good, not just someone who's a robot or who's awkward or whatever, the case may be. So those are the 3 points I give to any younger artists or anyone looking to get in the industry is be good at what you do, be good with people, try to be a good person essentially, and be authentic. That's what I think that's what a lot of people inherently can smell BS. So be an authentic person is half the trick, really. Is being a decent representation of yourself. And then thirdly is just, yeah, find yourself and put yourself in opportunities and places to network with people who can or would want to hire you. Um, that's the best advice I can give, and I hope that helps people. That's my story, and that's how I've gotten to where I am in life. Um, and it's again, it's not just from hard work, but hard work is a huge part of it. Perseverance, not giving up, not hating on yourself so much that you destroy your confidence, but being critical enough of yourself and your work to say, okay, maybe that person gave me a criticism that was hurtful or harsh. Maybe you have a peer or another student, someone who's a jerk on the internet. There's always bullying. You got to have some thick skin in life because life is rough. But maybe you can take the skin off the bone, metaphorically. Someone says something mean about your work, whatever, and maybe they came off as a little bit hateful or rude. But if you can be mature and intelligent enough to say, yes, that hurt, but what were they actually saying? What triggered that reaction from them? What caused it? Maybe it was completely unwarranted and they're just a mean psycho. Or maybe 9 times out of 10, they didn't deliver the information very gracefully or kindly, but there was some validity to it. So you take off the meat from the bone. You take the valuable elements away from the hurtful elements. You separate the wheat from the chaff, right? You come to the bare what's useful in what they said and grow from that, right? Instead of just letting it hurt you, make that a strength. Make that something that makes your work better. Like, okay, they noticed this flaw in my work, or they noticed this flaw in my character. I can be a big enough person to understand that what they said is true, but was said in a very poorly executed way, and that will help you again, just, become a better professional and a better artist. Um, and that's just a better person, really, in the end, to be able to take criticism well, to roll with the punches, so to speak, and be able to come back stronger from it. That's a really good trait to have, and not everyone has that. A lot of people will react emotionally, and they'll just let themselves go to the automatic gut reaction to something rather than being introspective, holding their tongue. Like, I'll even say this, like, an interesting point of my life that I've really literally gained from, and I'm grateful to have had the foresight and wisdom from my dad and other people influencing me positively when I was younger. There's been a couple times where I've definitely been treated unfairly in the industry by people in the toy industry in particular, specifically. And I had every justification to curse out and yell out and just put down someone who did me an injustice. But I chose to hold my tongue because I thought to myself, what would this benefit? It would feel good in a kind of sadistic way for me, in a revenge kind of mentality of like, oh yeah, I said what I wanted to say to this person and I put them down. And I was justified in doing so because they mistreated me and they treated me unjustly. And so, F them. And I could just burn that bridge to the ground, just go nuclear, both barrels to the face. And maybe I would feel good, kind of, not really. I think I would just be angry and just be like, oh, it would just be this weird, angry, cathartic moment. And then I would have destroyed that business relationship forever. And sometimes it's fine. I mean, it's never great to say mean things to other people, but maybe at times there's a justification where you're actually teaching them about something that they would never realize otherwise. But most of the time, it's not going to benefit you, and it may actually hurt you, especially if those people are higher up than you in the chain of command or in the food chain in general, and can, tell honestly what you said to them to other people. Then you just did yourself a disservice. You put yourself in a bad light and acted unprofessionally. So you're not going to win anyone over that way. But what I have learned from holding my tongue, and just taking some, you could say it's intentional or unintentional, but being judicial about how I interact with some mistreatment. Of course, if someone did something to me or said something to me that was so heinous or so unethical, then yeah, they're getting both barrels. But if it was just somewhat out of ignorance, or naivety, or them being overwhelmed with other things that I didn't know about necessarily, but they were just so busy that things fell through the cracks or whatever. But yeah, deciding not to go nuclear on somebody has wound up actually, or just treating other people with respect, even if they're making you angry and you have a right to be angry back, but instead you give a calm answer that's still your opinion or your view on the situation, but it's not an enraged response, but a controlled, mature response to say, hey, look, I don't agree with you on this, or what you said is offensive or hurt me or whatever. Just want to let you know, if you handle the situation well, as I've been lucky to do it a few times, I wound up becoming either friends with that person down the road, and or from the professional standpoint, that friendly business relationship became a recommendation from them down the road, because I think whether they knew it or not, they respect me because of how I treated them. I respected them, even though I wanted to be disrespectful, maybe back, in return. Giving a calm answer turns away wrath, right? It's a biblical verse, but it's true. So I've found that I've literally made thousands and maybe even tens of thousands of dollars in jobs that were given to me through recommendations by people who I thought could have been my enemy professionally in how they conducted themselves with me. But because I was judicial, I was careful and used discretion, discernment in how I handled the situation, that wound up returning literal dividends. I literally got lots of more money in work from those people recommending me because I was good at what I did. Even though they mistreated me, I executed perfectly and well on what I was doing for them. And because of that, it wound up making me more money and getting me more jobs. And so it's a chess game, I mean, like, a lot of this life is a chess game, and you have to know how to choose your battles and when to, like, shut up. Sometimes you are justified and you shouldn't hold your tongue, but more often than not, I would say 100 times, 10 times out of 10, it's always better to stop and think before you say something that could be detrimental to your potential future, your professionalism, your reputation, all that. Um, so yeah, anyway, so that's a really long answer to how to get in the industry and how to stay in the industry, I guess. Because no one is really going to hand you anything, and the most you will get is a recommendation from someone else. And yet you still have to deliver, you still have to show up, and you still have to be the one that's the face, the voice, the mouth, the hands. So yeah, I hope that helps people watching, whoever's out there. Um, that's from over a decade of working in the entertainment industry at this point. Um, see what do we got here. Sorry, I missed a bunch of stuff here. Where's the pillow streamers see it? Oh, cool. Okay. What do you think is a good way to study anatomy? A great way to study anatomy. Life drawing, man. Like, I don't know how they're doing that now. Maybe they're just doing it through Zoom, which is not the same as physically seeing someone else there. But life drawing. So, like, any college, drawing courses, drawing one, drawing two, etc. You have still life. You can do this at your own place. So you can do this in your apartment. Put something physically in front of you and start drawing. But anatomy is going to be a little bit more difficult, like I said. But you can find some a lot of resources for human anatomy online. Um, but yeah, you search for blank anatomy. Like, that's what I did just for this stuff here, just to get these drawings. Like I said, Tara Whitlatch is a goddess amongst artists. She's incredible. Her work is amazing. Her animal anatomy knowledge. She's a great anatomist. So it's like anything in life. I mean, you want to be good blank, study good blank. You want to be a good writer, read good authors. You want to be a good filmmaker, watch good filmmaker movies, films. You want to be a great anatomist, look at great anatomy references. Where do you find them? Googling it, and then finding who are people who are renowned for replicating good anatomy and or great representations of real anatomy. So photographs of, like, when I left medicine to work in visual effects. One of the primary things that all med students and biology students that are going toward medicine do is we dissect cats. Sadly, cats have been euthanized from vets or wherever else. So you'll get a skinned. Sorry to be gross, but you'll get a skinned cat, much like what you just saw in that reference image, but real. You get a skinned cat that's been put on ice and that's been plasticized, essentially. So they, like, preserve the skin through formalin and injecting the veins, the blood, replacing the blood with, like, a rubberizing fluid. So you get, like, blue and red. So you get your like all your systolic, diastolic, all this stuff that is represented. You have your physical anatomy there that you can then reference. That's one way, of course, but that's like courses. But I mean, if you can find photographs of animals anatomy, that's helpful. But finding good footage, finding good photo reference, finding as much 360 photography or video of something that you can is great. There's a lot of sites out there with, like, photos of real people who are nude or in swimsuits or underwear, that will show you great anatomy, and in very dynamic poses or sometimes simplistic poses. There's an endless library of that out there. So I would say, just finding good reference, just like anything else in life. You want to be good at X, study the masters of that. Look at their reference. How do you manage to maintain real world scale? That's always kind of a little tricky in ZBrush, unfortunately. But for me, what I've done is the most when it comes to like 3D printing, just using Scale Master right here. So you use Z plugin, come to Scale Master. Click this button here, sliders to subtool size. Tap it usually twice or 3 times because sometimes it'll just go to one value. You want to make sure it gets all three axes. And so this here is the millimeters, so we want to get this in inches now. What is 32 millimeters in inches? Yeah, that's 1. The other one was 4, that was 9. So you got all your different values here. But, whatever software you want to export to, just make sure that you understand that this is at the right scale. And then export out, unit scale. You can also get like a one unit helper, like right here. So if you want something that's 1 millimeter, or let's say like 1 inch. Like what would be it'll give you a little cube, right? Blam. Right there, that's a 1-inch cube. Now I know that that is 1 inch. And that's really one of the best ways, in my opinion, in ZBrush, if you're talking about 3D printing something, or even just reference in general. The best way to do it is to know, all right, this box, no matter what, don't touch it, just make it and then leave it alone. This box must be 1 inch anywhere this model is exported with to. So export this out with the cube. And just make sure that people know, whoever you're sharing it with, wherever you're going to, that must be 1 inch, and it must be proportionally connected. Everything else must react to that. So scale that accordingly. That's a great way to keep real world scale in your scenes and wherever you're exporting something in and out from. So you get your 1 unit helper scale cube from just hitting this button once you've chosen the appropriate units. That's how I would do it in ZBrush. Much for the advice. You're welcome, dude. Yeah, hopefully it helps. Used to work for the toy industry, so that you can sculpt in real clay, cast in resins, paint sculptures, real materials, not just 3D printing. Yeah, I mean, if that's where you want to do, if that's what you want to do in the toy industry, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's like anything in your portfolio. It's like anything in your portfolio. If you want to do certain things in the industry, show them, like do it, and do the work you want to do. Kill them with kindness. Yeah, man. Fires you. All right, cool. Good. Do I animate as well? Not really. My extension of animation is mostly blend shapes and or like tweening points. I'm not an animator. I mean, I can think in terms of animation very well. I understand how things should move. I understand weight and showing gravity and squash and stretch. I understand all those principles. But I just haven't really had a need or desire to learn animation formally. But I might be dipping my toe into that now more for the short films I want to make. I also did a lot of motion capture for one of them, for the human characters, of course. So that's going to help me a lot with shortcutting animation that I need for the short films I'm working on. Yeah. So anyway, all right, we're at 2:30, so I'm a little over time, but I know no one was after me now, so we're good. Yeah, so I think in 2 weeks I'll be back on. You guys can feel free to tune in then. But tomorrow, if anyone here's a gamer, and talking about cats, I'm going to be streaming the second half, or at least second portion. Maybe there'll probably be 3 parts. But I'm going to be streaming Stray. This is a great video game. I played it on my PS5 and beat it, and now I'm going through it again on PC. It's yeah, when you're really thorough with it, you might spend like 10-12 hours playing the whole thing, or so. I think I spent around like maybe 15-14 hours really just thoroughly enjoying the environments and looking at every nook and cranny on the PS5. Anyway, I'm playing Stray. It's about a stray cat in the future, and getting stuck in a underground city with a bunch of humanoid robots and a little companion droid that translates the robots into cat, I guess. So it's a really cute, fun, beautiful video game, and has some pretty good animations. And yeah, so I'll be playing through that tomorrow on my Twitch. So you can find me. Want to? It's Twitch TV slash Daniel. I believe that is correct. If you want to watch my playthrough tomorrow, I'm probably gonna do it around this time, so probably around like 12:30 noon tomorrow, Saturday. That's West Coast time, Pacific time. That'll be around 3:30 East Coast. I'll probably go for a couple hours. And so yeah, if you guys want to hang out again, that's where I'll be. And then otherwise, yeah, and then 2 weeks or so, I'll be back on here and getting back to the cheetah and who knows what else. So anyway, thank you all for hanging out and listening to me ramble. I hope that it was helpful. And yeah, we'll do this again soon. Cool. Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, and again, social media, if you want to follow me anywhere, I'm just at Daniel. Yeah, Arts. You can find me on Instagram there, Twitter. I don't really do much. I mean, I don't really post a lot on Twitter. I really reshare stuff. Facebook, yeah, again, same. Okay. I'm very resistant to social media at this point. I'm very tired of it. But I'll at least post like ahead of time when I'm streaming so that people know. And any cool little projects, I'll try to share them on there too. So thanks for the follows and thanks for your attention. Take care, everybody. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend. See you later.